so for math today, we are going to be talking some more about shapes, and we're going to be talking about turning shapes into equal parts. So before we get started, let's review the shapes that we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about, what is this shape? A circle. What do we know about circles? We know that it has no corners. We know that it's closed, and we know that it is round, okay? So we're going to be talking about circles. What are some things that we know that's shaped like a circle? A pizza, and I hope that some of you did your shape hunt. I saw that Abe had done his shape hunt, and he sent it to me on Seesaw already. So I hope that lots of you are doing your shape hunts around the house. Okay, we also have a square. And what do we know about a square? We know that it has 1, 2, 3, 4 sides. 1, 2, 3, 4 corners. What kind of corners? Square corners. And there's something special about the sides. What do we know about the sides of a square? They're all the same length. Good. So we're going to be talking about a square. And what is this shape? A rectangle. What do we know about rectangles? How many sides? 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. How many corners? 1, 2, 3, 4. What's special about our corners? They are all square corners, but not all of the sides on a rectangle are the same length. So that has 2 that are shorter and 2 that are longer. So when you hear the word half, where have you heard that word before? Have you ever been asked to share something with your brother or your sister? I know a few of you have younger brothers and sisters. Have you ever had a piece of candy or some fruit and your grown-up has asked you to break it in half to share it with your little brother or sister? Or some other times that you've heard the word half. You have half of the time at recess on the swings and half of the time running around the playground equipment. What about your lunches? Has anyone ever cut your sandwich in half? So when we talk about the word half, it means 2 equal parts. And so we can divide shapes into halves too. So half means 1 of the 2 equal parts. Halves is what we call those parts. So if that we have 2 halves of the square. So let's talk about how we can turn a square into 2 equal parts. How can we create halves? Well, I could fold it this way. I could line up my edges, just like when we're folding a piece of paper. And look, I have 2 equal parts. So the important part about it being half is that it's equal parts. So if you were sharing a candy bar with your younger brother or sister or with your friend, you would want the parts to be equal so that you could share it and both have the same amount. So I can split a square into halves like this, or I could fold it the other way. And then I could have this half and this half. There's another way that I can fold a square into half. I could connect the corners that are across from each other. I could go diagonally. Let's see, I've got to line up those corners. That's important. And then I have this half and this half. So remember, half, you want two equal or the same size parts. Let's see how many different ways we can fold a rectangle in half. Well, I could fold it hamburger style. And when I open it up, I have the top half and the bottom half. So I've asked you to fold your papers into halves before, and that's asking for 1, 2 equal parts. So I can fold it that way, or I could fold it hot dog style. Like that. 1, 2 equal halves. Now, are these halves the same shape as those halves? Well, they're both rectangles, but do they look the same? No, but that's okay, because all that matters is that these halves are the same. And there's one more way that we can turn a rectangle into 2 halves. I have to go diagonal, so I need my pen to help me, just because it's kind of tricky to go diagonal with a rectangle, just because you can't just fold it the way that you can a square. So I'm going to draw my line to be able to show you. There you go. And so I'll hold it up so that you can see. You can have it in half like this. So since I'm going to have a hard time with folding it this way, I'm going to cut it to show you the halves. So I'm just going to cut right along the line that I drew. And we're going to see if this rectangle is in 2 equal parts. Okay, I have this part. And I have this part. Let's line them up to see if they're equal, because they have to be equal to be halves. And they do, they line up. And so I can also fold or cut a rectangle into halves diagonally going across. When I do that, when it's diagonal, what shapes are the halves? They're triangles, and they're special kinds of triangles. Do you remember from yesterday? You're right. It has a square corner. So there are 3 ways that we can turn a rectangle into halves, and there's 3 ways that we can turn a square into halves. Now, what if I took my rectangle, and I've learned that to be half, it has to have 2 parts, right? So what if I folded my paper right here? And I have this half and that half. That's not half, because half has to be equal. So just like a half with a half of a candy bar, I want equal shares. Just like if you have to share your candy bar, equal shares. They have to be the same size. That is really important. Otherwise, it's just 2 parts. And 2 parts are okay, but if you were sharing your candy bar with someone, would you want both of you to have the same size? Or would you want to not have a lot, or to not give your little brother or sister or your friend a lot? You want it both to be equal. You want it to be the same. The last shape that we're going to talk about is a circle. And so let's see how many different ways we can fold a circle in half. So I'm going to fold it this way. And open it up. Is it in half? I have this side and this side. Yep. Okay. So what if I folded it this way? Open it up. That's half too. What if I started right here and folded it in half? Oh my goodness, that's half too. Okay, let me move it over one more time. Fold it in a different spot. I'm still lining it up so it kind of looks like a taco. Okay, and then we open it. That's half too. So there are lots of different ways that I can fold a circle in half. Does anyone know why that might be? So yesterday we talked about what makes a circle different from a different shape like an oval. So we know that the distance, or if we were to measure from here to here, if we were to measure across the circle this way, it would be the same as if we were to measure from here to here, or from here to here, or from here to here, or from here to here. So we learned that no matter which way you measure across the circle, if you're going in a straight line from this side to the other side, that it's going to be the same as long as you're crossing over the very middle of the circle. So that's why there are lots of different ways to fold a circle in half, because the distance or the measurement is always going to be the same. So today we talked about how we can look at shapes and we can break them into halves, or two equal is super important, two equal parts or two equal shares. So there's an activity on Seesaw, and I am going to pull it up on the screen to show you so that you know what you will need to do. So let me pull it up right here. So if you have the Seesaw class app, so a lot of you have been on Seesaw and a lot of you have been doing some awesome activities, but I haven't seen everyone on it. So if you need help downloading the Seesaw class app, it's a little different than the family one that your grown-ups have, but the directions for that are inside the bag that you took home on the last day of school. So if you need help with that, that is totally fine. There's a piece of paper in there. But if you already have the Seesaw class app, you would go to your activities page. And many of you have been doing so many activities. Just during this video, I see that I got 8 new activities to check. That is awesome. I have so loved checking out all of the work that you guys are doing. But one of the activities that you have for today is called Halves. So you would click Add Response. Okay. I need to look at the instructions. I'm going to click right here, View Instructions. It says, watch Miss K's YouTube video about equal shares and halves. If you're hearing me right now, you'll have already done that step. Use the drawing tool to make each shape into halves. Press the microphone and explain what the word half or halves mean. Make sure you use math words to explain. And if reading that is tricky for you, I read it to you also, and so you can click this little triangle right here to play the directions and you can hear me reading them to you. But let's see, so it says to use the drawing tool. Here's my drawing tool. So I'm going to click on the pencil and it says that I want to show halves. So what shape is this? This is a square because it has 4 sides that are all the same length and 4 square corners. So I need to be able to show half of this square. Let's try that. Is that half? No, because it has to be 2 equal shares. So it has to be the same size. So I'm using the eraser and I'm going to erase that. Okay, let me try again. Let me click on the pencil again. So if I want it to be 2 equal halves, 2 equal shares, I'm going to draw my line right here. And it doesn't have to be perfect, just the best that I can. Okay, does that show half? It sure does. So then I'm going to use the pencil for all of these other shapes. And I can draw my half line any way I would like it to. It does not have to be up and down. It can be any direction as long as it has two equal parts. And if you're using a tablet or a phone, then you can actually use your finger to draw the lines. That might be a little easier. Now there's one more part of the directions. I also needed to use the microphone to explain what the word half means. And if you've paid attention to this video, you'll know. So then you would use the microphone and record, and then you would click the green check to add it to your journal.